Okay. So recording begins. This is for Genesis 33. And as I was just saying, this is a very short chapter. It's only 20 verses. And a lot of it we might actually kind of go through quickly because I already talked about it. A lot of it last week. This is really just the conclusion to chapter 32. So 32 leaves off with Jacob wrestling not Esau, Jacob wrestling God, and getting his new name. And this is the following morning after the sun has risen.
And Jacob lifted his beauty, and behold, Esau had 400 men with him. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the two female servants. And he put the servants and their children in front, then Leah with their children, and Rachel and Joseph after them. He himself went on before them, bowing himself to the ground, and came near to his brother.
Okay. So one of the
Hey,
things.
hold on. Evan, mute yourself.
Oh, you probably should mute yourself. There we go.
That was driving me nuts.
Sorry.
I couldn't tell what I was doing.
So one of the things that I feel like should be obvious from so the change from like this morning from the way that Jacob was acting the night previous, he had sent all of his family ahead of himself, and now he's reversed that, and he's going before his family. So I had mentioned that where I think it was Nate had kind of pointed that out about like Jacob was being a coward, and now Jacob is being less of a coward. But in a certain way, Jacob kind of is still being tepid because those he still is maintaining those divisions that he had, right? And so one of the examples that we talked about last week was with that kind of illustration that Brooke did of a student kind of blindfolded sitting down into a chair. This really is kind of like the first time that Jacob is doing that with God, where he's fully encountering the danger while trying to trust in God at the same time. So he's going slow. He's not really committing fully, but at least he's putting himself in front of his family this time rather than having his family go first. But he still is putting, right, he organizes the divisions of his family according to his wives, and then the two female servants. So that's going to be Zilpah and Bilpah, right? And so he puts the servants and their children first, and then Leah, and then Rachel. And so on the off chance, so last time we were like, okay, he's doing that on the off chance that Esau starts attacking them, he will still get away. Now he's doing it so that on the off chance that they're attacking him, his favorite wife and children will get away. Hey, Mike, what's up?
Nothing much. Had to take care of something real quick.
That's okay. We already started recording, and we read the first paragraph.
Okay.
But yeah, that was kind of the only. I think that was the only part I had for that one. Yeah. But he's also trying to he's still trying to show humility here. And you have that he's bowing himself to the ground 7 times as he comes near to his brother.
But Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell upon his neck and kissed him, and they wept. And
okay, so I was just gonna pause it after that single verse. So I'm curious, does that verse remind you guys of any other portion of the Bible?
Yes, this sounds very much like
The prodigal son.
Yes.
yeah, prodigal son.
Okay. And yeah, that was that was the part that screamed out to me too. And I think it's interesting because as we were talking about last time, that I really felt that you should kind of be treating Esau as a bit of a, not necessarily a stand-in, but like a mapping on of God to Jacob in this story. And we're even going to get a reference to that in a couple verses. And so it's interesting to me that Esau kind of plays the role of the father in the prodigal son story here. Who that's the stand-in for God in that story. So I just felt like that connection was really obvious. But we'll keep going.
when Esau lifted up his eyes and saw the women and children, he said, "Who are these with you?" Jacob said, "The children whom God has graciously given your servant." Then the servants drew near, they and their children, bowed down. Leah likewise and her children drew near and bowed down. And last, Joseph and Rachel drew near, and they bowed down. Esau said, "What do you mean by all this company that I met?" Jacob answered, "To find favor in the sight of my Lord." But Esau said, "I have enough, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself." Jacob said, "No, please, if I have found favor in your sight, then accept my present from my hand. For I have seen your face, which is like seeing the face of God, and you have accepted me. Please accept my blessing that is brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have enough." Thus he urged him, and he took it.
Okay. So like I said, the main Evan's now here. This is weird because I'm facing so you're just gonna be behind me for this recording, I guess.
That's fine. Maybe I'll stay back.
So as I said in the last one, the main theme I felt like for or one of the overarching themes for that last one for chapter 32 is all of the divisions that have slowly developed as a cause of the fall, and how those were represented by all of the divisions that were within Jacob's own camp. And now we see, as Esau has embraced him, all of those other divisions have come together, and they're now one. They're now one. They're now one family, and so you have in this story that unity of everything coming together, and also that the reason why all of this strife got started was because of this argument over blessings. And part of the reason why Jacob sent the messengers even to begin with to let Esau know that he didn't need anything from him, was to show, hey, I'm not coming to take anything more from you. God has blessed me. And now Esau is actually returning that and saying, and actually, I don't even need to be mad at you because God has also blessed me, which is a turn for Esau. And so in the same way that that Jacob has like gone on a journey and like is changing from the man that he was, Esau has kind of gone on a journey and has changed from the man that he was too, but it was just off screen and we didn't see it. And this portion right here is also really important for understanding whenever you read later in the Bible, whenever you have God saying lines like, I think I've mentioned this before, but whenever you have God saying lines like, Esau I have hated, he's not talking about Esau the person, because this whole section right here is about how God has also blessed Esau. And so Esau doesn't really need anything from Jacob. The other thing is that although Jacob or Esau doesn't need anything from Jacob here, pay really close attention to what's happening, because Jacob still offers the present or the offering, right, which we talked about last time. But as you can see, and one of the things that I'm trying to get you guys to understand is that the motivations behind the presentation of the offering now versus the presentation of the offering in the last chapter are completely different. And this is where I was trying to get you guys to understand that Jacob was treating Esau like people treated old pagan gods, where they're trying to give them an offering to appease their wrath and to get something out of them. Whereas the direction that the Bible is trying to get people in their understanding is that that's not the way Yahweh works. The way that he works is he's going to do something for you because he loves you. And then out of that love, you then return stuff back to God, which you can see, because Jacob says, please accept my blessing that is brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me and because I have enough, right? And so you could apply that to like modern day tithing, right? In that you don't tithe or you don't give, and right, it doesn't just have to be tithing, it can be with service and works of any sort, right? You don't do them because God requires them. You do them because God has dealt graciously with you. That's why you do them. Okay. So the motivation for it comes after. It's not a negotiation with God to try and get something out of God. And that's one of the overarching themes and messages that the Old Testament is trying to get the Israelites to understand. Now, from Esau's point of view, on accepting this gift, I think that this is actually a humble thing for Esau to do on his standpoint. It's really common for people to, whenever they're in a good situation, if someone else offers them presents or a gift or something, it's very often that they'll refuse it out of hand and won't accept it because they're like, no, 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 I'm good. I've kind of come up with this thing that I said a long while ago, which is never refuse a gift from another Christian. Because ultimately, whatever that Christian has, including yourself, whatever that Christian has isn't really theirs at the end of the day. And so if they are offering you a gift of some kind, you should accept it graciously because that's a gift that's ultimately from God and is coming through that person. And so you need to not be a hindrance to God using that other person, even if it means blessing you. And you need to understand that at the end of the day, you're dependent upon God. So all of your stuff comes from God anyways. So don't reject it just because it's coming through this other person. And I think that that's actually a good principle because then you also then remember that whenever you go to bless somebody else, it's not yours. You're just a steward over what God has given you. Anybody got anything for anything we've talked about so far? We're halfway through the chapter and we're only like 10, 15 minutes in. No? Okay. We'll keep going then.
Then Esau said, "Let us journey on our way, and I will go ahead of you." But Jacob said to him, "My Lord knows that the children are frail, and that the nursing flocks and herds are a care to me. If they are driven hard for one day, all the flocks will die. Let my Lord pass on ahead of his servant, and I will lead on slowly at the pace of the livestock that are ahead of me, and at the pace of the children, until I come to my Lord in Seir." So Esau said, "Let me leave with you some of the people who are with me." But he said, "What need is there? Let me find favor in the sight of my Lord." So Esau returned that day on his way to Seir. But Jacob journeyed to Succoth, and built himself a house and made booths for his livestock. Therefore the name of the place is called Succoth.
Okay. So this portion is kind of weird, right? Because as I just said, right, I just got done kind of highlighting how in the last paragraph even we kind of have what I see as the conclusion of like that story and kind of all the themes that have been going on, right? You have all this division stuff and blah blah blah. And all of it comes together and they're kind of finally one again. But now we're transitioning into living in the land. And it's not clear here, but everything that I've read from other people, it seems like Jacob is kind of messing up here. It's not really explicit whether or not what Jacob is doing, if it's wrong or not. But you kind of have implications that it's maybe wrong. One is that he goes to he goes to Succoth, and he's gonna basically then be in Shechem. And at the start of this, right, whenever he was back with Laban, God told him, "Return to Bethel, where I met you. Like I'm the God of Bethel." Bethel is actually a little bit south of Shechem, and Bethel is a little bit north of Jerusalem. And so it seems kind of like Jacob didn't really go all the way like he was supposed to. And he never goes down and as far as I can tell, he never really goes down and meets Esau in Seir. Seir is way south down in Edom, south of Zoar, which is supposed to be, that's like the little tiny insignificant city that's by like Sodom and Gomorrah or whatever. So like it seems like Jacob is it seems like Jacob is screwing up here. But it's not clear exactly why he does this or that it's explicitly bad. But I do think that it has to do with I think that it has to do with the stories that are going to take place in the next couple of chapters. I think Jacob's decision here sorry, to settle near Shechem is part of why kind of everything else is going to happen. Oh man. Okay. I had a Reese's and I got a peanut in my throat. I'm dying. Let's finish the chapter.
And Jacob came safely to the land of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, on his way to Paddan Aram, and he camped before the city. And from the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, he bought for 100 pieces of money the piece of land on which he had pitched his tent. There he erected an altar and called it El Elohe Israel.
Okay. So all of these characters that just got introduced by Shechem, Shechem the person, and Shechem's father Hamor, they all matter to the next chapter. But then he erects that altar, El Elohe Israel. I'm not exactly sure how that should get translated because I mean El is like the shortened for God. Elohi is like another way of saying Elohim, so it also means God, and then Israel is obviously Israel. So it's something like it's something like the mighty God of Israel is.
Mine translates it as God, the God of Israel.
God, the God of Israel? Yeah, that's what I said. I was like, because it's God twice.
Yeah.
But you can also translate El as like mighty. But yeah, it'd be like God, the God of Israel. Also, Succoth from above just means booths. So I guess those booths are like, they're like barns. We made barns for the livestock. So yeah, like I said, I don't really have anything else for like this chapter. Does anyone have any thoughts? I'm gonna get a cup of water real quick.
My only thought was on, so you had just mentioned that, okay, maybe we should just go ahead and accept gifts from those that are like other Christians. But then Esau is offering like, hey, I can leave some people here with you. And Jacob goes like, no.
Yeah, which is kind of him messing up.
Right. But also, doesn't it sound reminiscent of like Abraham and Melchizedek?
It is. He's treating. He is like, and so I was kind of gonna save a lot of this for actually the next chapter, but he is treating he's treating Esau as not a family member, kind of. And that's another way to think about it, of the like accepting gifts from Christians. It's like they're a part of your same family. And I actually think that the whole like accepting gifts thing actually has a lot to do with the next chapter. And it's kind of the reverse message, actually.
Oh, and also, doesn't that mean, so if I have this right, are 13 and 14, or 14 specifically, is that just a lie? Where he says, "My Lord knows," but Jacob said to him, "My Lord knows that the children are frail and the nursing flocks and herds are a care to me. They are driven hard for one day, all the flocks will die.
Oh, flocks will
Let-
die.
Let my
Yeah.
Lord pass on ahead of his servant, and I will lead on slowly at the pace of the livestock that are ahead of me, and at the pace of the children, until I come to my Lord and serve." So he's saying, "My Lord," as in Esau, as in my Lord.
Yeah.
So like, here you go first, and I'll catch up. But
Yes.
then he doesn't.
He doesn't.
catch up.
No, he doesn't. And that's the thing, right? He doesn't. And it seems like so I guess I was gonna show, let me do a screen share. I forgot to do this. We want to certain no. We want to see this one. Yeah. So here's a little like map here. Where's the one that has the Jabbok? So here is the like Jabbok River. Seir is like way down here. You can see Shechem up here. Here's Jerusalem. Bethel is like kind of in between there, like right there. So right, he probably crosses the Jabbok. But then I think he's supposed to like cross the Jordan, right? Because that's actually, I believe, where like Esau is. And he's like now in the land, and he's supposed to journey south, like all the way to like down here. But it seems like he actually goes north. Like it seems like not only does he not follow Esau, but he goes the opposite direction. And so yeah, it does seem to be like a lie, or like him trying to get away from Esau, which seems like, and that's why, like I said, most of the commentaries and stuff that I read were like, it's weird because they're like, it seems like what he's doing here is wrong, but then he also sets up this altar. And setting up altars are almost always seen as a good thing. And so it's this kind of weird paradoxical event.
Well, the vibe that verse 18 and 19 give off, because it starts with, "And Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem." So it's like there's like relief kind of displayed in that sentence. Like, oh, good, we did it. Like, oh, I got really scared about meeting Esau.
He avoided Esau.
I managed to make it all, and which is weird juxtaposed to the scene of them just coming together and like being happy to see each other, or
Right.
at least Esau being genuinely happy to see Jacob.
Right.
But Jacob's still in this thing where he's like, "Oh man, poof, good thing I gave him the slip.
Right.
And now I'm out of here. God, thank you for letting him not kill me."
Exactly.
I think that seems to be
It does. Yeah, it does really seem like that's kind of like the resolution to the story, but that's part of why it's a bittersweet. It's kind of a bittersweet ending, and I think it's actually what causes the next chapter. And so I guess, do we want to just go on and start to read the next chapter?
I've got nothing else to say.
Diego, Mike, do you guys got anything? No, you guys are still muted. Okay.
Yeah, I got nothing. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Yeah. There's not much to it. All right.
There we go. I couldn't find it. I guess I don't care.
Okay. Well,
But,
we'll.
are we gonna
we'll
do the whole
restart this.
thing?
Sorry.
Hello?
What'd you say, Diego? Go again.
Did I mute you now?
He was asking if we're starting,
I muted
or if we're
you.
gonna
This is
finish
funny.
34.
I don't know if we'll finish 34. We might just do the first couple of paragraphs. Let's see how far we get. All right, here we go.
Chapter 34. Now Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to see the women of the land. And when Shechem, the son of Hamor the Hivite, the prince of the land, saw her, he seized her and lay with her and humiliated her. And his soul was drawn to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob. He loved the young woman and spoke tenderly to her. So Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, "Get me this girl for my wife."
Okay. So when you're like just reading Genesis, this chapter comes out of nowhere, right? Because you're following along with like the patriarchs and all this stuff. And then suddenly you have this story about Dinah, and we're actually gonna have kind of one other story about Judah a little bit later that seemingly comes out of nowhere. Man. But the point that I was trying to make whenever we were finishing up the last chapter was if Jacob hadn't tried to run away from Esau again, even after everything was settled, arguably this story wouldn't have happened. Right? Like this story happens because Jacob settles near Shechem. And what you have now is you have boiling up the problem of the impurities in the land. And man, this is annoying because this isn't even my sickness. This is just like give me like 2 minutes. Okay. Let's try this again. So as I was saying, this probably wouldn't have happened if Jacob hadn't have gone north. And this is the issue of impurities in the land and people in the land following after other gods. And that is going to be a problem for the Israelites once they go through the Exodus story and are coming back into the land. And the reoccurring problem that they have while they're in the land is the mixture with the mixture with the the mixture with like the pagan, the mixture with the unclean, the mixture with the other nations, right? And so like I said, one of the themes that we had was kind of the lines of the two different like representations of the name of like the family that's going after Hashem, the name of God, and the representation of going after men of the name, as in men of great renown, men trying to be these great big leaders. And one of the problems is going to be is that when they're finally in the place that they need to be and trying to follow God and trying to do the things that they're supposed to do, the way that they get attacked becomes different. It's no longer people trying to like retain them and hold them and use them for their own stuff, like it was with Laban, or like it's going to be in Egypt, or like it's going to be in Babylon. Instead, it becomes, hey, join with us, become like us. And as you become like us, we'll all become great. And so, to me, I really see this kind of being even similar to like when Satan offers Christ, like the kingdoms of the world, right? He's like, worship me, like join me, and I'll give you everything that you need. And so it becomes the opposite story to the story that just took place, right? We just had a story taking place of there being a bunch of divisions, and those divisions need to be reconciled, and things need to come back together. And now we have things are basically back together, but other things that aren't supposed to be in there are trying to join with you and trying to come and be a part and make what was once pure now impure. And whenever you have stories that have these kind of seemingly contradictory messages, you should understand them as it's trying to provide you wisdom, right? That's like what Proverbs does, where Proverbs has these contradictory sayings. And the point is that, well, there's some times where you implement this one rule and there's other times where you implement this other rule. And you need to have discernment about when to implement each rule. So to make more sense out of what I was saying, let's keep going.
Now Jacob heard that he had defiled his daughter Dinah, but his sons were with his livestock in the field. So Jacob held his peace until they came. And Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to Jacob to speak with him. The sons of Jacob had come in from the field as soon as they heard of it, and the men were indignant and very angry because he had done an outrageous thing in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter, for such a thing must not be done.
Okay, so a couple of interesting things in that paragraph. So you have this part about Jacob held his peace because his sons were not there, which almost seems to kind of suggest that if his sons were there, that like he would have immediately done something about it. But it's not clear because as we read later, Jacob gets upset about what his sons do. So that line kind of confuses me, and I'm not really sure how to take it. But the other part that I thought was really interesting is where it says, such an outrageous thing, because he had done such an outrageous thing in Israel, right? This is the first time where Israel is now getting used to mean like the whole land, kind of like the area and the people group. Being like in Israel, this type of a thing shouldn't happen. Man, I don't know what's going on with me. Those were kind of like the main points that I had.
Yeah, so it is definitely the extension of, so I guess that what was it described as? Yeah, the last chapter. That altar that was set up as God, the God of Israel. So like Israel's becoming shorthand, saying Israel is becoming shorthand for the house of Israel.
Yeah.
And then it's just applying to the domain here, I suppose.
That they control.
Yeah, just here outside of Shechem.
Yeah, and so it's not clear as to like how far Israel extends at this point. But I think it's really interesting that you have, but it definitely, it's using in Israel like it's going to get used later to mean like kind of the whole land, even though right now it's just kind of their temporary camp.
But Hamor,
What were you
Which
gonna say?
probably means it's anachronistic to a degree,
Probably.
because the sons of Jacob were probably saying something like, "How dare you do something?"
Just like period, or like
Period.
to us.
or to our house.
yeah,
But you, at this point in the story, if you were telling it, you could now say that what they're effectively saying is, "How dare you do something so outrageous in Israel?"
right.
spoke with them, saying, "The soul of my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him to be his wife. Make marriages with us. Give your daughters to us, and take our daughters for yourselves. You shall dwell with us, and the land shall be open to you. Dwell and trade in it, and get property in it." Shechem also said to her father and to her brothers, "Let me find favor in your eyes, and whatever you say to me I will give. Ask me for as great a bride price and gift as you will, and I will give whatever you say to me. Only give me the young woman to be my wife." The sons of Jacob answered Shechem.
Right. So that's kind of what I was saying earlier about They're giving you now like a good offering, right? And a way to like make this work. And it seems pretty clear to me that you're not supposed to accept it. That being said, I think the action that they take is not necessarily the correct action that you're supposed to take. Um, um, yeah. Okay. We'll keep going. Yeah, I was gonna reiterate the point that the word soul there for my soul, the soul of my son, that soul is kind of a tricky word because it kind of also means body. So if you read it as the body of my son Shechem longs for your daughter, it kind of becomes less romantic. But kind of maybe make a little bit more sense as to like what's going on there.
I don't really take his admiration as romantic in the first place.
Yeah, no, I don't think you're supposed to either.
Yeah.
But
Whenever you say you seized a woman, there's just nothing good there.
right. Yeah, there's also kind of an overall lesson here about you know that line that everybody says about it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. That's not true. And that's terrible advice. Never follow that. He didn't ask for permission, and instead is just asking kind of for forgiveness afterwards, and it's not going to work out.
Hamer deceitfully, because he had defiled their sister Dinah. They said to them, "We cannot do this thing to give our sister to one who is uncircumcised, for that would be a disgrace to us. Only on this condition will we agree with you, that you will become as we are by every male among you being circumcised. Then we will give our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters to ourselves, and we will dwell with you and become one people. But if you will not listen to us and be circumcised, then we will take our daughter and we will be gone."
So the thing that I think is really interesting about this part is because what they're doing right now is they are taking the thing that is supposed to mark them out, the thing that's supposed to mark them out and separate them out to God. They are now using that as a weapon. And if you remember, that's the same thing that I argued Lamech and the descendants of Cain did with the mark of Cain. They took the mark of Cain, the thing that was supposed to be a protection from God, and they start using that thing from God that is supposed to be protection. They use it as a weapon against the people that harmed them. And so I think that this really is a corruption of it's an example of a very early corruption of a good thing that God had like given them.
Their words pleased Hamer and Hamer's son Shechem. And the young man did not delay to do the thing because he delighted in Jacob's daughter. Now he was the most honored of all his father's house. So Hamor and his son Shechem came to the gate of their city and spoke to the men of their city, saying, These men are at peace with us. Let them dwell in the land and trade in it, for behold, the land is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters as wives, and let us give them our daughters. Only on this condition will the men agree to dwell with us to become one people, when every male among us is circumcised as they are circumcised. Will not their livestock, their property, and all their beasts be ours? Only let us agree with them, and they will dwell with us.
So that last line there of will not their livestock, their property, and all their beasts be ours kind of gives away like the overall game plan here of the reason why we're letting them integrate in with us is so that we can ultimately profit off of them. Also notice again that this conversation takes place at the gates of the city. We seemingly have that all over the place of these instances of different people always having these conversations at the gates of the city, and any time where I kind of, so to me it brings back the Sodom and Gomorrah story. And one of the things that I didn't have you guys do, but if you have Step Bible open and you click on Dinah's name means judgment. And so to me, I really think of this as like, this is a kind of, and if you remember, the Sodom and Gomorrah story happened because of inhospitality towards towards the visitors. This is kind of like a man-imposed version of the Sodom and Gomorrah story on this city. To me, it seems like there's a lot of echoes between those two. Okay.
And all who went out of the gate of his city listened to Hamor and his son Shechem, and every male was circumcised, all who went out of the gate of his city. On the third day, when they were sore, two of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, took their swords and came against the city while it felt secure, and killed all the males. They killed Hamor and his son Shechem with the sword, and took Dinah out of Shechem's house and went away. The sons of Jacob came upon the slain and plundered the city, because they had defiled their sister. They took their flocks and their herds, their donkeys, and whatever was in the city and in the field, all their wealth, all their little ones and their wives, all that was in the houses they captured and plundered. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, You have brought trouble on me by making me stink to the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites and the Perizzites. My numbers are few, and if they gather themselves against me and attack me, I shall be destroyed, both I and my household. But they said, Should he treat our sister like a prostitute?
So there's a couple of interesting things in that. One, was it just Simon and Levi, or is this another instance, or is an instance of Simon and Levi are representative of groups by this point? Because again, Simon and Levi are they're kind of older by this point, so maybe they have some kids or something at this point. I don't know, or maybe some servants of their own or something. are they going? Is there? I'm asking, is there more than 2 of them going through and killing all these guys, or was it just the 2 of them? It's unclear to me. You have the line, the sons of Jacob, and I don't know if that is supposed to just refer to just those 2. But it seems like plundering the whole city would take more than 2 people. Like, I can conceive of 2 people slowly, methodically going through and killing a bunch of people. I have trouble conceiving of 2 people plundering a city. Limited hands.
I mean, I suppose it's possible there's more, considering Esau had at least 400 men with him.
Men with them, right? And so it seems to me like they probably have more people with them than just the 2 of them. But I also think that it's interesting that very clearly we get this statement from Jacob indicating that what they did was wrong, but it was wrong in the sense of, so because it's wrong in this sense, by making me a stink to the inhabitants of the land. And so we've talked a lot about like the idea that they definitely seem to have this kind of sense of like objective morality, but the ancient Near East and the East to this day tends to have a moral system more based around an honor-shame dynamic rather than like just a strict guilt dynamic. And what I mean by that is stuff is really bad if it's shameful to the person publicly. And so this is one of the things that you'll actually see if you read like Hammurabi's Code and like other ancient Near Eastern like texts and like log codes, that stuff was really only seen as bad if it made people look bad to members of the community, right? It's basically the Courage the Cowardly Dog thing. Like, you made me look bad. If you make people look bad, that's the thing that's actually really bad. And it's actually, that's another kind of like overarching goal of the Torah as a whole that's going to get addressed in later portions of the Torah, is really trying to combat that inclination that things are only really bad if people find out about it. And that's one of the things that you'll end up seeing with like the story of David and Uriah and Bathsheba, right? Like, if there would have been this idea that, well, if nobody ever found out that David had done that with Bathsheba, and Uriah had actually like done the proper thing and like listened to his king and like made it look like it was actually his kid, well, then everything would have been fine, hunky-dory, and David wouldn't have messed up. But the idea that the Bible presents is, no, David actually did mess up, and David never should have done that. And so you have this weird instance here where it seems like partially what they did kind of was right, because you're not supposed to mix with the people that have foreign gods and do all this bad stuff and treating people bad. And you have this question of, should he treat our sister like a prostitute? That never gets answered. It's just left there. And it seems to me like the answer is no. He shouldn't have treated their sister like a prostitute. But should they have done what they do? And between the ending of the last story, or of the last chapter, where you had everything come together, but not fully, and still there was division, and now you have division and conflict and strife with people in the land, you're now getting into these more gritty issues and more troublesome territory. And to me, it just points the question back to the ultimate question that this whole, that this whole story is coming to, which is Israel and mankind as a whole need an ultimate redeemer to solve these issues. Because how is this issue right here supposed to get solved? How is this issue of Dinah getting raped supposed to get solved? The answer is they don't have an answer. And so, because they don't have an answer, the only choice that they have is to trust in God and hope that he can redeem the situation somehow in the future.
Yeah. So what I'm thinking on this is that the question of should he treat our sister like a prostitute? The answer is obviously no. But what the question is begging was like, okay, how can we prevent this behavior? How can we prevent this sort of outcome in the future?
How can you stop this thing from happening
Right.
in the land of Israel?
Well, because obviously the following, like, it feels like a really lame response to Jacob's point of saying, you just made us all in grave danger by the fact that we now are going to be kind of hated for this. Because you guys went a little too far. Because one, when you say he shouldn't have treated her like a prostitute, did all of the men of the city do that? Did that also require you to take all of their goods? No. So that response isn't really sufficient for that.
It's not proportional.
Right. It's not proportional. But the real question that they are facing is when they had that response is, well, how are we going to prevent this in the future? And there are only two options. It's one is you find a way to make sure that they all have changes in their behavior so they actually don't do this. And that actually kind of gets visualized by the fact that they're become circumcised, become like us, which would be how they do it. But they also understood that that's not going to be enough to change them. So they went for the second option, which is just kill them.
Kill them, get them out of the
Which
land.
is why, we need Jesus to step in to fix the story, because Jesus' answer to that would be, no, he should not treat her like a prostitute, but we forgive him, and then I'll change them.
And I will also say, though, that we are kind of skipping over some steps whenever we say that Jesus is the ultimate answer to this question. And that is correct. But also that within the context of the Torah and the way that an Israelite would have been thinking about this passage, about how do we get this sort of thing to not happen in the future, their answer would be the Torah. Because that's one of the things that right, because within the context of the Old Testament, where all of this leads to for them is the covenant at Sinai, which is the giving of the law. And they talk about how much joy and how much they love the fact that God gives them this law, And it's by this law that they now can govern Israel. They can now govern the land. Whereas before, they don't really know what to do. But after enough time, they'll have these systems in place that will help them govern how to operate in the land. Now, once you get to that point and you get past the Torah and you get into the law and the prophets, you then have new issues arise, which is that the people who are living with the Torah are finding that, well, even that isn't sufficient. And then that's whenever you start making steps towards Messiah and all of this stuff. And then ultimately gets to Jesus.
So you're saying that this is the reason why the Jews needed the law, because if they didn't have the law, they would end up like genociding every like
Yes.
people group that wronged them.
Yeah. Yes, actually.
Yeah, that seems to be what this actually is kind of saying.
And also because you have to remember, if you put that in context of a lot of the other Old Testament laws, right? Because the thing that they're trying to avoid is, right, how I linked it to the weaponizing of the mark of Cain. They're trying to avoid the problem that happened with Lamech and with the mark of Cain, where he goes, I killed a young man for wounding me. Disproportionate retribution. The disproportionate retribution brings about violence in the land, which leads to outcries, which leads to floods. That's the thing that they're trying to avoid. And so in order to avoid that, they need something that carries them through that. That's an ark. That's the law, right? And you have these things, these ideas overlapping each other in the ancient Old Testament Israelite mind.
Yeah.
Wow. Michael and Diego, got anything?
I noticed that they had to go get their sister from Shechem's house. So he had her hostage for this treaty.
I assume that's where she got seized to up at the top.
Yeah.
Well,
I
was curious whether they were trying to bargain by actually like doing it the proper way, or if he just like said, "Nah, I'm gonna keep her and then I'm gonna make a bargain."
Yeah. Maybe they never released her.
Which would make sense on why they did what they did. So they could break her out, and then they'd have to kill everyone there because they'd retaliate.
I read it as, or at least I read it as, they make this deal to circumcise all their people. So then when they go back home, they take Dinah with them, and then they circumcise themselves.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. But like,
it could be that
it
way.
never even said that she was with them in the whole treaty thing.
I don't think they would.
Yeah, I don't know.
Think they would let her go back. If she was with them during the discussion, I don't think if they were willing to kill all of them later, I don't think they were willing to let her go back for even a couple days.
Yeah.
That's also a good point.
Wasn't there.
Yeah, I don't know. It's unclear.
Because that would justify the ask for forgiveness instead of the blessing or whatever, or
Yeah. No, I agree with that. That probably It's. I mean, the only thing that makes me think that that's maybe not the case is that Shechem does say, "Only give me the young woman to be my wife," but it's questionable what he's asking for there. Is he asking for that he doesn't have her currently, or is he asking for he doesn't have her as officially like his wife? So I don't know.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought.
But yeah, so that's all I had. Next week, the next chapter is a genealogy chapter, no, next chapter is not, but it leads into a genealogy chapter. So maybe so I only say that to say possibly be 2 chapters next week as well, but I don't know. But I think that's all for now.
I like what you said about how like it's don't skip the step of like the Torah and stuff, because yeah, I was kind of like forgetting like, oh yeah, this is like before so much stuff. But like, because in the ending where they say, should he treat our sister like a prostitute, I just kind of like, that goes into my ears like in a modern sense of, well, what are we supposed to do if our sister gets raped? And like
Right.
you said, how it's just kind of an open-ended question. And I think of just recently reading about David, like before he was crowned king, and just like how the couple different times where he's like, God, should I pursue after this clan of people? Yes. God, will you deliver them into my hand? Yes. And so of course it's never answered here, but that's like, I just thought of that example, how like, okay, well, what you should do instead of going out and taking the matter into your hands and incurring God's wrath, is try to go through the Father first and see if that is His will.
Yeah, you should be asking. Yeah, right. You should be asking ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
Right, which is why I actually, that it's interesting that you say that, because I don't know, maybe I haven't mentioned this to you guys, but I was thinking about this a lot, kind of the other day, about if you go back to the garden story, about Adam and Eve, about during the fall, what should Adam have done? Like, whenever he's standing there and the snake is talking, what should Adam have done?
Wait.
Yeah, the snake is talking to Eve, right?
Okay, you said Adam.
Yeah, I'm talking about Adam. Adam's standing there and the snake is talking to Eve. What should Adam have done in that situation?
Oh, he's in earshot? Is that in the story?
Yeah, it's within, that's in the story that he's within earshot, because it says then she gave it to Adam who was with her. Adam's within earshot, right? And one of the things that I've heard from people is, well, Adam should have driven away the snake. And that answer never sat right with me, that it should have been Adam who like drove away the snake and prevented like Eve from eating of the fruit. And the conclusion that I've come to now is that what I think the right answer is because Adam knew that Adam should have known that the actual prohibition was not to not touch the fruit. Adam knew that the prohibition was to not eat the fruit. Adam should have taken the fruit from Eve before she ate it. And then he should have taken the fruit to God and said, "Hey, God, explain this fruit thing to me again." Right? And I've been thinking about this in context of the wrestling with God that we just got done talking about with Jacob, about that would have been the right way to wrestle with God in that situation. It would have been, you just got new information that's making you question God. When you get new information that's making you question God, you shouldn't do the thing, ask for forgiveness later. What you should do is you should take the thing to God and say, "God, explain this to me." That's the proper way to do it.
I mean, that's better than the only other thing I can think of him doing in that situation, which is adding another prohibition on top and just leaving the area of the tree. but now you start to spiral into, you're pushing yourself away more and more away from the center of the tree.
You're
to
adding
the
more
border.
regulations. Yeah.
And so that can't be correct, because we already know that doing it in one layer deep wasn't right. So adding another layer onto it is the incorrect move.
Right. Yeah.
Or there's the other option, since they had direct access to God himself, he could have been like, "Hey God," and then poof, there he is, and then been like, "Hey, what do you think of the situation going on right here?"
That's kind of what I was thinking.
I mean, I feel like that's the same answer that I gave, but
Yeah. My literal, like, my visual representation of my answer was Adam going, God, Eve's touching the fruit. What do you want us to do?"
Your answer was the tattletale.
I mean, they
Right.
technically were children's minded. They had intelligence, but like they were still kids, basically.
In a sense, morality based. Yeah, I'd agree with that sentiment. All right, I'm gonna stop the recording there.
Oh.
All right. See you guys.